We're about to start.
Balasek, and I am from Montreal, Quebec, and have some family scattered around Quebec and Ontario.
I'm Balchat Rai.
And I'm Donovan Martin, and we're from Winnipeg, Manitoba, occasionally called Winterpeg, a city that's so cold it's been known to be below the temperature of Mars at -53 degrees Celsius.
Winnipeg is also home to Canada's only National Human Rights Museum. From our respective cities, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the Youth for Others Advocacy Symposium, titled Solidarity in a COVID-19 World. We have people from across Canada and from across the globe, and a panel of very qualified speakers.
All right, first off, some practical information. Everyone's mic will be muted and videos turned off. Please write your questions through the Q&A box. We will read your questions at the end of the presentations. The session will be recorded, and all sessions and workshops will be available for 3 months on VFairs and later transferred over to the Canadian Jesuits International website.
Thanks, Sebastian. Now, before we begin, we want to share a song written by Ottawan teacher Donna Hughes called Settle Down.
Behold the revelation that God makes all things new. We plant our feet side by side in the rich earth, working together to see it through. We hold the revelation that God makes all things new. We plant our feet side by side in the rich earth, being together we see it through. It's time for a change, sharing the promise as we walk on the road. It's time. We see the rainbow colors fly. It's time for a change, standing with those who have a story to tell. It's time for a change. It's time for a change. You are the revelation that God makes all things new. We plant our feet side by side in the rich earth, laughing together we see it through. We are the revelation that God makes all things new. We plant our feet side by side in the rich earth, hoping together we see it through. It's time for a change, to rediscover how deeply we are loved. It's time for a change, to rebuild, to restore, to renew. It's time for a change, to rejoice, to rejoice. Do we think we know all of the answers? Do we think we know all the questions too? This can get us into trouble, because our God makes all things new. Time for a change, to rebuild, to restore, to renew. To rebuild, to restore, to renew. To rebuild, to restore, to renew. It's time for a change, to rebuild, to restore, to renew. To rebuild, to restore, to renew. To rebuild, to restore, to renew.
An excellent piece. And I'd like to apologize earlier, but the song was not called Settled Down, but rather Revelation. Regardless, it was an excellent piece by Donna. So we thank her again.
Thank you, and indeed, Donna, that was very well sung and very eye-opening. Now we will be moving on to a presentation by Alex Neufeld. Alex is one of 7 young people taking before government to court for weakening Ontario's 2030 climate target. As a young entrepreneur, Alex is concerned about the uncertainty climate change creates for her small business. When record-breaking flooding slammed Ottawa in the spring of 2019, it threatened Alex's business. This led her to be part of the lawsuit brought against the Ontario government. I would now like to call upon Alex. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much. So yeah, my name is Alex Neufeld. I am a small business owner. I own a dress rental business, and I'm also a fashion design student living in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Ottawa, or the land that Ottawa is on, is the unceded territory of the Algonquin Indigenous peoples. So I'm just going to go through some frequently asked questions about the case that people often have. And then I'll be happy to answer questions, I guess, afterward from the Q&A. So the first one that people obviously want to know is, why are you suing the Ontario government? So me and a few other young people, we're suing the Ontario government because we believe that the government's actions, or should I say lack of action rather, on climate change is threatening our lives and our futures. More specifically, we are taking issue with the Ontario government's greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, so their GHG emission reduction targets. Probably most of you know this already, but climate change is caused by these GHGs, and they're called GHGs, greenhouse gases, because they have a greenhouse effect. They get trapped like in the atmosphere and trap heat, which causes global temperatures to rise with catastrophic consequences. So everyone in the world has to work together to reduce our emissions as quickly as possible to avoid these catastrophic consequences. But unfortunately, the Doug Ford government is taking us in the wrong direction. The previous administration, before the Conservative government got elected, had a fairly ambitious GHG emission reduction target, but this government scaled it back immensely, and we believe that the fact that they did that doesn't reflect the urgency of the climate crisis, and we believe that it's a risk to our right to life, liberty, and security of the person under Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So we're suing. So another question that a lot of people ask about the case is, what do you hope to achieve with this case? So I guess kind of the ultimate goal, this would be like the best case scenario, would be for us to win our case. And what that would mean would be having a judge essentially strike down the government's emission reduction target, saying that it's inconstitutional, and making them come up with a new target that's in line with the science and is going to actually make the reductions that Ontario needs to do in order to pull our weight in fighting climate change. That may or may not be a realistic thing to hope for. Judges can sometimes be reticent to do things. They might feel that that's more of a political thing to do and not within their role. So that's like a best case scenario. This is what we're hoping for. It's obviously not a guarantee. So beyond that, I would really like for a judge to determine in court that climate change is a threat to the future's rights and lives of youth, and that we have a right to be protected from it, and that governments have an obligation to do something to protect us from climate change. So for me, that would be great, because that could also open the door to, other lawsuits of this kind. So yeah, really just having a judge establish that we have that right to be safe from climate change. And then why did we choose the legal route? This is something that that people ask me a lot. As I said, there are some disadvantages to it. Like, judges might feel it's not their place to rule on this kind of issue. And there are other disadvantages too, like the court process is slow. It is so slow. It takes months to get anything done, basically. You try to put in your evidence, and then like it takes months for it actually, the government has to respond, and then you finally actually get to go to court and stuff like that. And the government throws up roadblocks in our way. So it's very slow. A lot of resources are required too. It's a lot of time. Our lawyers work super hard around the clock trying to push this case forward and having good evidence for why we should win. So yeah, a lot of resources, very slow, and the odds of success are frankly not that great. So there are a lot of disadvantages. So why go with the legal route? So for me, at the end of the day, we need to try everything we can to fight climate change. We don't have a lot of time left, and when the government lets us down, I think we need to go to the courts and show them that they are letting us down and that they're kind of our last line of defense, the courts, and they need to step in. So basically the way I see it is, there's a lot of risk, but we don't really have any other choice. And the potential for reward is great. So that's why we're choosing the legal route. I definitely don't think it's the only route for climate activism. I think there's a lot of other things that can be done. Protesting is very effective, writing letters, staging sit-ins. These are all good things, but the legal route is just one of many tools in our tool belt, and it's one that I'm pursuing, and we'll see what happens. So another question that people have are, what are some of the key milestones in this case? This one is really, really exciting for me to talk about because we had an exciting one a few months ago. So as I said, the government kind of tries to throw up roadblocks in our way because they don't want us to succeed, right? They don't want to have to change what they're doing. They think our case should be thrown out. So in the judicial field, there's something called a motion to strike, which basically, if you sue the government, they might put up a motion to strike, basically asking the judge, hey, we think this case is silly. We don't think it has any chance of succeeding. You should just throw it out and not listen to it at all. So the government of Ontario tried to do that. They put in a motion to strike. We had a whole court hearing. This is what I mean about, the court's taking a long time because, we had to wait months to actually get a hearing for that motion to strike, and that wasn't even the real hearing. So we had that court date. I watched it on Zoom. It was very interesting, very long. The judge kind of wore a funny outfit. I thought that was interesting. But anyway, so we had that motion to strike hearing. And then a few months later, we found out that we won. The judge had decided that, no, our case isn't silly. It's not frivolous. It does have merit and a chance of success, and it should not be thrown out. So we were really excited about that. And that's actually the first time that a case like this in Canada has been able to get through that type of roadblock, because other people have tried to sue the government over lack of action on climate change, and the governments have always put in a motion to strike or another preliminary hurdle of that nature. And the judge has always sided with the government. They've never allowed a case to go through. And people are appealing those decisions. So maybe we will see those cases go through at some point, but they've all been, gotten that preliminary hurdle. But ours is the first one to have been able to get through that. So that's super exciting. And the government of Ontario tried to appeal, and the Court of Appeal said no, they won't hear their appeal. So we're getting our court date in September 2022. I don't remember the exact date, but we're going to court. A judge will hear our case on its merits, and we will see what happens. So I'm really excited about that. And then I guess one last thing that people often ask is, how can I get involved or support the case? So we're not looking for any new applicants right now. Applicants is, in our case, it's like a plaintiff basically, but it's a separate type of case, so it's called an applicant. So we're not looking for any new applicants right now. However, there's always ways you can support in terms of like sharing on social media, sending a letter to your MP or MPP saying you support the case. If you live in Ontario, stuff like that. Donating also to the organization that's representing us, Ecojustice. So they're an environmental law nonprofit, and the lawyers at Ecojustice are representing us in this case. So I definitely recommend signing up for email updates at ecojustice.ca, or you can also follow Ecojustice on social media. I think they're on like all the socials. to get updates on our case. So that's all from me. Thank you so much. Excited to hear your questions.
Yes, if there are any questions that you have for Alex, feel free to put your questions into the Q&A box. Alex is going to be around with us for a little bit longer. Alex, you developed your presentation from questions that people have asked you around this. And I'm guessing what do you think in terms of a multiple prong way of trying to tackle this? I attended a workshop in which they were saying that going through the court routes, that there were some studies being done that going through the court actually has a higher chance to affect change than some of the more traditional ways in which you had mentioned marches, writing letters, and so on. I mean, they had strong evidence to indicate, but it wasn't necessarily conclusive. What are some of your thoughts as you've engaged people around questions of this nature? And I'm sure that you must be getting them quite a lot. What are some of your reflections as you have thought about those different takes on this?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, so like I said, there are disadvantages of the court route, obviously, but I think it does have enormous reward when it does work. Like you said, it can be very effective at affecting change because at the end of the day, the government has to listen to the courts. Generally speaking, they can appeal rulings, but at the end of the day, if any level of court says something, especially if it's the Supreme Court, because you can't appeal it beyond that. It's the law of the land essentially, and the government has to follow what they've said. So in that sense, yeah, obviously the court can be very, using a court case to advance these kind of things can be very effective. So I think it's important to try it, and it's, like I said, the governments are trying to shut these cases down. They have motions to strike and stuff like that. So it's only if a lot of us try it, I think, that we're going to succeed. And I think another advantage of doing things through the courts is that it can get media attention. And there are lots of things that can get media attention. Like, if it's a big protest or stuff like that, that'll get media attention too. But, something like writing your MP or whatever, that's probably not going to get media attention unless it's in the context of a huge campaign. And having that media attention and that awareness from the general population can also be effective because it educates judges too. So the media attention, but then also the fact that you're bringing these arguments to the courts and the lawyers making the arguments can have a huge impact on educating judges. Because quite frankly, they're not necessarily trained in an environmental field. They study law, obviously, that's their training. So having lawyers who are well versed in the ins and outs of climate science and the law surrounding climate change and how the law can be applied to climate change, that can be very educational for judges. And then judges have enormous power to force the government to do stuff. So I think absolutely it's worth going the legal route. And the more people do it, the more people put in the time and the resources and all of that stuff that is very intensive in terms of doing a court case. The more we do it, I think the more judges will get educated, the more the media will be talking about it, the more general awareness this will create, and the more possibility with that judges are going to do something. So yeah, I think there's good even if the evidence isn't conclusive, I think it's pretty clear to me that court cases can obviously have a big impact.
Great. Thank you very much, Alex, for that. Appreciate your presence very much. I'm going to turn it back over to our hosts.
Yes, so thank you, Alex. Thank you for that presentation. It was very clear, very educational, very well done. Now, we were originally going to move on to our next speaker, who was going to be Emma Gonzalez on behalf of Anita Pihachi, who is a Witota community leader in the Amazon region of Colombia. However, probably due to internet problems or for whatever reason, she seems to not be able to be making it today. But I'll continue along with her bio nonetheless. She is a strong advocate for indigenous and ecological justice. She actively participated in the Amazon Synod hosted in the Vatican in the fall of 2019. Anatalia will speak on the Anatalia would have spoken on the importance of integral ecology, solidarity, and the challenges faced by Indigenous people during COVID-19.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Gonzalez, and today I will be speaking on behalf of Anatalia Piachi Cuyuelo. Anitalia has a degree in ethnic education from the Pontifical Bolivarian University of Medellin. She belongs to the Aucana indigenous people of the Colombian Amazon, Clan Chivabaña, Jaguar. These are the people of Cotton belonging to the indigenous guard Ticuna, and in the municipality of Leticia, Amazonas, Colombia. Anatalia is the mother of two sons, Sebastian and Mario, the wife of Carlos Suarez, daughter of Eufrasia Cuyuelo, the woman of abundance, and of Arcesio Pillachi, wise man and protector of the earth. For them, this great responsibility to defend the right to life in the territory is of great importance. Here we have a moment of recognition for all young people. To you, young people, you young men and women, our seeds of new life. To you, all our honor and acknowledgement on behalf of our ancestors from this Amazon rainforest. You are like our other hearts. For you and to you, we, the more senior people, we strive to do our work well, with good thoughts, with good feelings, with the spirit of the word of life. For you, we take care of the land and the territory. We take care of the water and share it. We take care and sow the seeds to give them the best food. Every day we hear the sun, the moon, the stars, the wind, and we ask the plants to help keep us together in reciprocity and in healing. To you, our young sweet pineapple heart, heart of the Father and of the creative mother, children of the breath of life, the joy of the peoples. You are all the reason for us to get up every day. We thank you for your eyes and your vision. We thank you for your smile and your laughter. We thank you for your energy, and we hope that it continues this way. To you, young people, I ask for forgiveness in the name of the elders. As we fail, we got lost in the way of being parents, rulers, leaders. We failed to be an example. The road has many distractions, but you make us look back and start again. We give you the best of us. We hope that you receive the best of us. And to life, we will take care of our faults. We hope to never let the disappointment dominate us. You are already old enough to listen well, understand well, to discern each story of pain and change the way by hope. You are able to switch directions without judgment and without criticism to the past, because that has brought us anger, rejection, and make some want revenge. We must hear with the spirit of the word of life that fills us with reconciliation, with the spirit of peace, with the spirit of truth, to be able to forgive the story. And this means that each of us is responsible. As oppressors, we must take blame for this. Today, I just want to fill your hearts and your thinking with sweetness. Today, I want to fill your basket of good intentions so you can help us upload this burden with joy, so you can help us spread like the wind, the word abundance, and recognize scarcity so we can all eat, so we can all share, so we can all celebrate, and so we can all be thankful. We must all be like the water, so wherever we go, all the obstacles disappear. Because young people from Canada are the voice of the youth living in this jungle, of these sites of Amazonian cities. Young people under threat, you are the ones that make the SOS calls. You are our other hearts. Today, we will be speaking a little bit about integral ecology. And from the Amazon jungle, Natalia has told us to relate to you young people who live in Canada and who are in the process of intellectual training about scientific knowledge, reading multiple philosophy books, and I'm sure some of you will become scientists who will generate great knowledge challenges with some fruitful outcomes and some without them. And all that is good, and Natalia has learned it, although she's never understood that since in her culture, the process of learning is different. And Natalia never read books because they weigh a lot, they're tiring, and put some in a daze. It's difficult for Indigenous people from Natalia's tribe to feel the spirit of the writer, but yet they somehow are able to gain this knowledge. They're learning from us, they're learning from the youth. We learn from the womb to listen and to recognize who is my family. Then it is a long, constant process of listening to the words of advice of our elders. The first thing Natalia learned was something called nature reading. They read nature. This sharpened their senses as they were able to see the time of the moon, visualize it, and put two and two together. They were able to see the time of the sky and see the stars beginning to sow. They were able to hunt, cut their hair, protect children, girls, and young people with prayers. They were also able to create medicinal plants and diets. They listened to the wind, even when they invoked it, so it brought them seeds, freshness, and took away their diseases. And so Natalia spent time looking and listening to the animals, to the messages they relayed to her. She spent time smelling the aromas of the leaves and of the flowers that come from our beautiful earth. She paid attention to the messages they had for her. She also tasted and relayed her thanks through ceremonial celebrations and rituals. And Natalia says, I tell you that I had this privilege. My children and nephews, we all have fought to learn. We all learned how to nature read, while at the same time learning to read and write. Now, we are as young as you with great challenges. With what has just been said, I want to tell you that the Pan-Amazon region is an unimaginable world for the ones who do not live in it. At the same time, it has been the dream of gold, of conquering the new world and of salvation to the quote unquote savages. This heart and thought of ambition and conquests that has translated into slavery, death, indignation, ethnocide, sexual violence, domestic violence, discrimination, looting, and much more is what now makes many of us want to sit down and talk. We want to meditate and look together in solidarity for new ways that balance our way of relating to Mother Nature with ourselves. We want to respect and recognize good human relations with animals, with vegetable species, with minerals, and with spiritual beings. Each of us who dwells in this planet share today with Pope Francis the common home, as he calls it, to which today we refer as integral ecology. Everything is in a cosmos. Every one of us has a good idea of the principle of equilibrium, and we want you, our young people, to know it. We also want to tell you that we have understood that studying and reaching the great universities of prestige reading, their knowledge, their stories is the only way we have to understand what has been the development of North America, of Europe, of Asia, and of Africa. It's the only way we learn about wars, about neoliberal systems and dictatorships. We try to slowly identify why the hearts of those behind those systems only want accumulation of riches, only want to dominate and intimidate the underdeveloped. We wonder why they want to promote social inequalities. We want to know why they leave that aside to us. Every culture has riches. Why are some more important than others? Why are some richer than others? This is much more of consumption. This is much more than the economy of excessive extraction and devastation. In the 20th century, where the presence of the other or the stranger, and to which we say that it is our other heart, they have offered us access to information, technology, and to communications. But there's no guarantee that we will communicate. We are still disconnected as we lack the internet constantly. But we have smartphones, yet we don't know how to use them. And this has affected our family and our socio-cultural relationships with young people. Our parents fought hard to protect us from bad habits from our other heart, and they do not finish giving us the tools and diseases that came with the settlers. They killed many of our wise men, us, the offspring. We have tried to follow the path of our interinstitutional dialogue, of making treaties, but it is not enough because our other heart accepts it and signs all. Although without concrete works, without actions, we have left many times and our counterparts do not listen. They return and sign to warm us up, and with that, many times giving good faith to their intentions. We fall asleep with such a language that is not clear, and now it is very heavy. Our young indigenous women, mestizos, Black, Afro-Amazon, peasants with whom we share the territory because of our different migrations, they're vulnerable. They cannot clearly understand what developed countries have in mind about this Amazonian territory. Our indigenous communities, especially those that are far away, far from information, far from technology, far from communication, lack libraries, internet, dictionaries. They're unable to understand the meaning of the strange language. They do not have the tools to be aware of what happens in the world. We lack quality hospital care and guaranteed specialized healthcare for those diseases that can be treated with the help of science. In the long walk of life, our traditional spiritual doctors have learned and understood that we can work together with both kinds of knowledge, each one from its own. It is important to us that our medical sages of the jungle receive their due acknowledgement. The many studies of anthropologists and historians, as well as scientists, say that there's a new continent of 12,000 years, that we are descendants of Mongols. Maybe it is like that, but our elders tell us that our origin is here. We do not come from another place, nor are we descendants of monkeys. We agree with science that our origin is from water, so water is a primary part of our culture. Some, father creator fish, them with bagazo. These are scraps of a plant called huito genipa. Others were born from a hole, no fuico, and so on. They tell us about the principle of life, as the creator gives us the way of abundance, which is sharing, feeling good, celebrating together, taking care of each other in community, and showing us the path of scarcity. We are working to surpass the principle of life. We are working to surpass the awakening hatred, violence, hunger, inequality. In fact, there are gods, demigods. There are inanimate spiritual beings, and a constant struggle between the sweet, the cold, and the hot. Then we talk about sweeten the word. This is to warm up the heart of the other, to cool down what is hot. This is emotion, person, and social balance. And for each of those words, in fact, there are special species of plants of a lot of power, as it is coca, tobacco, sweet cassava, the ayahuasca, floripondio, and many others. Each plant has its spell prayer to heal, forecast, and each plant represents a spirit. These are mystical beings presented in our dreams or at the time of a trance, and that communicates with us. It gives us the correct message, whether it be for the good or for announcing what we should do to avoid misfortune. In this way, we protect ourselves from diseases, and we use to cure ourselves of those other diseases possibly coming. These practices are still ongoing. We are the Amazonian peoples in accelerated extinction. Each time the forest is disappearing by the extractivist mega projects or fluvial and terrestrial economic development, with each tree, many spiritual beings die. They disappear, and with them, animals, medicine, and the original peoples, us, the indigenous peoples. More than 500 years of colonialism today, and Natalia and me on her behalf have the opportunity to take other natives to be invited to these spaces of thought and settlers to be invited to these spaces of thought to make the word rise like a sunrise. We have recognized in the lines of time critical moments of our own human history. Every person from the Amazon of a different country has made its historical process, and everything concludes the same. Colonialism, since its arrival, brought extractivism, and with it, the negative impact to the territory. The culture of the peoples are affected. So is their spirituality, their education, and their health. And with that brings systemic extermination of the lives of originating peoples slowly, now more accelerated than before. But we have also learned this scripture, this language, to be able to express what threatens us and propose that we can live together. I share with you, young people, this historical information from the Amazonian peoples of Colombia, the Amazonas province, where there are 36 indigenous peoples still alive, and 52% of those inhabitants. The rest are children, grandchildren of those who have arrived. The information is based on their research for the process of recognition of collective victims within the framework of the peace process they carry in Colombia. And it is not enough to narrate only 50 years of the internal conflict in Colombia because it's an ongoing issue. With Julio Cesar Arrara from Peru allied company with England, rubber used to be taken to England and to manufacture the tires of war cars, as it happened during the First World War. This fact brought with it what is now known as the Great Rubber-Based Genocide and the extermination of indigenous peoples. According to research, more than 30,000 of them have died. All of these indigenous peoples were enslaved, tortured, condemned to die of hunger, and condemned to die in bonfires. Women were being raped while watching their children being killed. Wise men were persecuted and disappeared. This story was corroborated with the versions of our greatest wise people who were given this narrative. And we, his grandchildren, feel anger. We cried a lot. We felt that they let us orphans feel empty in our heart. The story of pain is only told to remember. Please recognize that these forms of violence only bring misfortune. Our elders cooled our anger, sweetened our hearts and our thoughts. They gave us and protected us to follow the way of living word, of abundance, through coca leaf, tobacco, and through sweet cassava. They send us to be messengers of the mandate, from the care of our mother nature, from our mother water, from our mother owner of seeds, our mother of animals, mother of dawn, for you, our other heart. Next is education. With the exit of rubbers, the Colombian state, through the presence of the Catholic Church at the end of the century, installs the indigenous internship orphanages, which were centers of discipline, control, and evangelization. The main impact of these centers was the loss of certain cultural practices, which prohibited the use of indigenous languages, the use of sacred plants, and breeding guidelines. At this time, the 1986 political constitution of Colombia saw us as wild beings. And they said they had to save the souls of the savages and reduce them to uncivilized life. But this change occurred in 1991 with the reform of the political constitution of Colombia. Since we managed to have 2 indigenous leaders, it was possible to recognize Colombia as a multicultural country. And this says, recognize and guarantee indigenous peoples and communities to self-determination and autonomy to decide its internal forms of coexistence, social, political, and cultural, as well as economic organization. The road has not been easy to give life to these constitutional rights, but something has been achieved. Territorial protection, right to health, education, it still requires the guarantee, and today we walk the Pan-Amazon Synod in a single way, care of the community house with the change that is the Catholic Church. Next is the establishment of a criminal colony from 1934 to 1971. These infrastructures arose, such as a health center in 1948, the airway in 1954, and a boarding school in 1970. In this decade, the boom enters from the extraction of animal skins, which hired indigenous labor, and again. There was then trafficking of narcotics and tourism in 1975 to 1980. This reaches the region. Once this activity reaches such, it carries out economic control, exploiting indigenous labor, and somehow imposing its armed authority, as well as using indigenous communities as a spectacular example of savages. This practice is still sold in tourism portfolios. The armed groups in 1998 were initiated with greater forceful actions in the territory, related to fluvial drug trafficking and mining in Caquetá, Miriti, Apaoris, and Putumayo rivers. The extractive booms of cocaine and gold by using indigenous labor and their inhabitants were an economic necessity. That is what was linked to these works. Yet they ended up extracting their cultural conditions of life. This translates into the weakening production autonomy of food, of fishing, of hunting, and cultural activities of knowledge transmission. This exposes a violation of territorial control and the autonomy of our own government. Additionally, other effects were presented to the territory by mining production and the pouring of mercury, as well as garbage. Mercury residues are returned to the river with the consequent damage to fish, water, and vegetation. Humans are difficult to eliminate, although elimination is presented in diseases. Generalized alcoholism and prostitution, as well as drug addiction, greatly impact the youth. These activities have impacted the landscape in this region, especially between Puerto Santander and El Miriti. Likewise, the activities mentioned above produced erosion due to the damage that has been caused by the underwater in the riverbed. It is important to clarify that in a situation of non-compliance and abandonment by the state, Indigenous people are forced to participate in extractive legal and illegal activities that are taking place in the region. This is done to obtain the goods that they do not produce, such as soaps, salt, educational material, school uniforms, shoes, work tools such as machetes, kitchen utensils, etc. The individuals search for money, as they say locally, the rebusque, has ended up weakening organizational autonomy and favoring the social control by extractive and military forces. Extractive activities, in turn, promoted deforestation by the sale of wood, and they used native forests to cut this wood. They replaced this with illicit crops and the construction of mining rafts. Because much of the gold extractive activities are considered illegal, this truly brings to reality the other security issues that led to the violation of this right to enjoy the territory through these military interventions against the mining rafts. All this leads to detentions, finger pointing, and abuses against some indigenous settlers. In addition, the bombings to traditional territories and rivers to dismantle mining rafts produce desecration of sacred and salty places.
Thank you very much, Emma. I have some good news. We have Anatalia here, so we thought we would cut the presentation of her words and just welcome her here. We can relate. Emma, you can turn your camera on. Yeah, good. And you can unmute yourself. And you can use your Spanish to welcome Anatalia here and invite her to unmute herself and to bring her camera on.
Hola, Anatalia, ¿cómo está? Tiene su micrófono apagado. ¿Lo puede prender, por favor? Y también la cámara.
We are hoping that she's here. We see her name.
Hola, Anatalia. No sé si está allí. Tiene su micrófono apagado. Hay un botón que se dice mute. O también si hay un M, lo puede usar también para prender su micrófono.
So I think that there's still something wrong with the connection, evidently. What I'm going to suggest is we are going to be wrapping up at about 4:30. And how many, I think probably what is good now is to bring this presentation to a close. We can send the English version of Anatalia's presentation to all the attendees so that they will be able to read her letter to us over again and what her presentation was. So I think that will be the plan for us to move forward from here. Maybe try just one more time to see if we can bring her on.
Yep. Hola, Natalia. No sé si, did we get a message there?
No, I think that was me. So go ahead.
Hola, Natalia. I don't think she's able to hear us.
All right. So I'm going to suggest that we close this time, and we're going to close it with a song that Donna Hughes wrote. It's related, it plays on the idea of settlers. It's entitled Settled Down. We were able to receive that and get that uploaded properly this time. So I'm going to ask Victor to go ahead and play this music by Donna.
Think I've settled too often, I think I'm too settled down. Think I've come a settler to this sacred ground. Taking you for granted, taking more than my share, and now I stand entitled to this whole crazy world. How can that be fair? It's not too late to say sorry. It's not too late to say it's bad. It's not too late to say I took something from you, maybe all you had. It's not too late to get ready for the change that's underway. It's time to get up, now get over, get under, get out of the way. 'Cause I'm not settling anymore. There's got to be another way. It's time to get up, now get over, get under, get out of the way. Oh, we can't settle anymore. We've got to make another way. It's time to get up, now get over, get under, get out of the way. Think I've settled too often, I think I'm too settled down. Think I've come a settler to this sacred ground. How did I miss the teaching, miss the truth that you knew? That there's something bigger to this whole crazy world than just me and you. It's not too late to be ready for the change that's underway. It's time to get up, now get over, get under, get out of the way. It's time to get up, now get over, get under, get out of the way. Think I've settled too often, I think I'm too settled down.
To end this off, I must tell you that young Indigenous people are like you. They breathe the same air, their blood is red, they see the same sun, they enjoy the moon, and they like to bathe in the rivers and lakes. We listen to music from heavy metal artists, from reggaeton artists. We listen to rock, salsa, merengue, the Korean musical group BTS, etc. They dye their hair red, blue, gold. They are up to date in fashion. They know of the world of soccer. They watch Squid Game, Money Heist, Elite, Game of Thrones, The Gallery of Broken Hearts, Honeymoon with Family, Maleficent, Stripe, The Last Dragon, etc. They also feel sadness and disappointment. They feel those depressive thoughts. They also dream of traveling. They want to know the world. They want to visit different countries. They want to share their culture, especially to those young people who live very close to Leticia, where Natalia lives. It is very small. It's a challenge to change this. Things don't go as they used to in the jungle and in the periphery. Young people and their realities are different. Each time period is marked by universal events, and with it, political positions and structures. For this reason, on behalf of Anatalia, I ask you, young Canadians, to express your solidarity with the problems lived out in Indigenous communities in the Amazon, that they are still living. Your voice is their voice. And in those spaces that they're not present and that you are, they want you to be able to have a higher and scientific education. They want a place where you can speak on behalf of Indigenous teachers at the level that you can. And of course, to be able to understand both worlds. We want to be interrelated, interconnected, in solidarity. We want to share our world, and part of this is to know that you care for our jungle and rivers. We are contributing to the world with oxygen and fresh water. We want you to get to know us, to recognize us as your other heart, and to live like us from a place of humility and respect for the common good. We want you to care for the biodiversity and care for our common home. The challenge is to change the system of this extractivist economy, and the key is integral ecology, a spiritual hug to all. Thank you.
Emma, thank you so very much for reading Anatalia's words to us. Appreciate that very much. We're going to prepare that document so that it will be ready to send out to participants in the coming days. In closing, I want to thank our hosts, Sebastian, Baljat, Donovan. You can please turn your cameras on. Thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for being flexible and working with us as things change en route. You are doing a great job, so thank you. I want to remind you to fill out the survey that we really would like to hear from you in terms of how has this retreat been for you? What are the things that worked well? Where are areas that we can improve on this? So please fill in the surveys and make sure that that gets submitted to us. I want to remind you that we're going to be going into, so we've taken all of this information in, we've heard from voices around the world, from the Philippines to India, to Honduras, to Colombia, to South Sudan, Lesotho, South Africa. We've heard from some very powerful voices over the course of this last few days. Our work is not done. If we've been listening closely to the voices, to the people that have shared their stories in our workshops and in our plenary sessions, they're saying that there is work for us to do. So I want to invite you, I know it's been a long day, but I do want to invite you to come and join us in the workshop, the advocacy workshop. We are going to do some role playing in terms of how do we put this into action? How do we feel comfortable with getting this into place to meet with our members of parliament? We'll have some young people who work in offices of MPs join us to kind of coach us through this. So please take time to be with us in the advocacy workshop that will be happening at 4:45 this afternoon. Great job, everyone. I am going to bring our session to an end, and we'll see you in the advocacy workshop at 4:45. Stop recording.